This story is titled, Fiancée Humiliated Me with Tiny Performance Comment in Front of Her Colleagues. Her face when I exposed her deepest secret was priceless. Hey everyone, I'm 41 years old, and I never thought I'd be telling this story. My wife Olivia and I have been living together for almost 9 years now, married for 8 of those years. I always thought we had something decent going between us. Not perfect by any means, but whose marriage is, right? I've been working as a corporate risk management consultant for 15 years. Started from absolutely nothing, no college degree or anything. Just worked my ass off and learned everything I possibly could about the industry. My old man taught me something important early on. Education isn't just about schools and degrees. He was a carpenter who worked with wood his entire life, one of the wisest people I've ever known. He always told me that respect comes from actions, not empty words. Over the years, I built my reputation on handling the difficult clients, the ones nobody else wanted to deal with. I became known as the problem solver, the fixer in my company. I've always kept myself in good shape too, hitting the gym 4-5 times every week. I used to play lacrosse in college, and I got into amateur kickboxing in my 20s. Nothing professional, but I won more fights than I lost. I'm not huge or anything, just proud of staying fit. 6'1", around 185 pounds, mostly muscle. I never really had issues with confidence, at least not until the recent years of my marriage. My wife works in medical equipment sales, one of those jobs where looks and schmoozing matter more than actual product knowledge. She's always talking about networking and connections, climbing that corporate ladder. She's the type who picks restaurants based on who might see her there rather than the quality of the food. One Thursday, she insisted we host a dinner party for her coworkers and their spouses. "It's important for my career," she said in that tone of hers. The one that means there's no room for discussion. I'm not big on hosting parties myself. I'd rather watch basketball with friends. But it mattered to her, so I went along with it. I spent the whole day making everything perfect. Cleaned the entire house top to bottom, cooked a full 3-course meal. I've always enjoyed cooking. My dad taught me that too. I made this prime rib that takes 7 hours to cook properly. Everything done from scratch. Homemade appetizers, even baked a tiramisu myself. Made sure the wine was at the perfect temperature, everything set up perfectly. The evening started out fine. Everyone was enjoying the appetizers, making small talk, complimenting my cooking. All these medical equipment sales types were dressed like they'd just stepped out of a fashion magazine. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect fake smiles. I started thinking maybe this wouldn't be so bad. I could handle being the good host for one night. Then Olivia hit her 3rd glass of wine. I know her patterns by now. Beer makes her sleepy, hard liquor makes her angry. But wine makes her mean. The conversation somehow turned to relationships, and I saw that look on her face. That smile that means trouble is coming. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. I couldn't do anything to stop it. She turned to her colleagues with that wine-induced confidence and said, "You know what's funny?" Her voice was way louder than necessary. When we first met, I thought he would be this amazing catch. Tall, successful, impressive in all areas. She emphasized all like it was some bad comedy routine. I was immediately on edge because I knew exactly where this was going. Her colleague's husband asked innocently, "And he isn't?" Everyone laughed, thinking it was just some harmless married couple banter. Then she held up her hand, pinching her thumb and index finger together with barely any space between them. "Some things don't measure up to expectations," she said. The whole table erupted in laughter while I sat there with my face burning red. But she wasn't even done. "Honestly, it's like being married to a teenage boy," she continued. "Quick to start, quicker to finish, if you know what I mean." More laughter followed. "Sometimes I wonder if I should buy him a booster seat for dinner." One of her female coworkers tried changing the subject, probably feeling how uncomfortable this had become, but Olivia kept going. "No, really, it's fine. We all have our crosses to bear. Mine's just smaller than most." Then she raised her glass in a mocking toast. I just sat there frozen, my food untouched, hands gripping my napkin so hard my knuckles turned white. The conversation finally moved on, but the damage was done. I could see it in everyone's eyes. Pity, embarrassment, that uncomfortable awareness you can't unsee. My manhood, my confidence, my dignity, all laid out as a joke at my own dinner table. The worst part? This wasn't even the first time she'd done something like this. It was just the first time she'd done it in front of people I'd have to face again. I kept thinking about how I'd cooked all this food, cleaned this house, And this was how she treated me. But like always, I just swallowed it down and smiled through it. Because that's what men are supposed to do, right? Suck it up. Don't make a scene. But something broke in me that night. Something that wouldn't be fixed again. What hurt most wasn't just the humiliation. It was realizing that my closest ally, my partner, thought so little of me that she would use my most private insecurities as dinner entertainment. Somehow I made it through the rest of dinner on autopilot, clearing plates, refilling drinks, forcing smiles, making sure everyone had coffee and dessert. I played the perfect host while dying inside. Behind my smile, something fundamental was shifting in how I saw my marriage, how I saw my wife, how I saw myself. After everyone left, she acted like nothing had happened. She kicked off her heels, flopped on the couch, and started scrolling through her phone. When I confronted her about what she'd said, she completely dismissed my feelings. "Oh, lighten up, it was just a joke," she said. "Everyone has these playful jabs at their partners. You're being too sensitive." She didn't even look up from her phone. "Would you like it if I made jokes about your body in front of your colleagues?" I tried to keep my voice level. She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so dramatic. It's different for men and women. Besides, they all know I love you." Then she got up and headed to the bedroom saying, "I'm tired. Don't stay up too late cleaning." That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, her words playing on repeat in my mind. This wasn't the first time she'd made comments like this, but it was the first time she'd done it so publicly, so deliberately. I thought about my dad and what he taught me. He was old school, believed a man should provide, protect, and persevere. He worked the same carpentry job for 40 years and never complained once, even when his hands got so arthritic he could barely hold his tools. "Son," he told me once, "the measure of a man isn't in his wallet or his pants. It's in how he carries himself when life gets heavy." My dad died 2 years ago from cancer. He fought it like a champion right to the end. Never complained, not even once. Just kept telling us not to worry, that he'd had a good life. That's the kind of man I wanted to be, the kind of husband I tried to be. I carried this marriage for years, taking her jabs, her criticism, her disrespect, all because I thought that's what a good husband does. My dad would never have complained about his marriage. He and Mom were together 45 years when he died. But I'm pretty sure Mom never mocked his manhood in front of friends, though. This dinner party was different. It was the catalyst that finally opened my eyes to the truth of our relationship. Sometimes humiliation can be the wake-up call you never knew you needed. As I lay there that night, I started to wonder when I had become this person. This pushover who would smile and serve dessert after being emasculated in front of strangers. My dad taught me to be strong, to be respectful, but he never taught me to be a doormat. I realized something else too. Dad and Mom had disagreements, sure, but there was always respect there, always love. I couldn't remember the last time I felt respected by Olivia. If I'm being honest with myself, I couldn't remember the last time I felt loved either. Morning came with newfound clarity. I hadn't felt this clear-headed in years. This wasn't a partnership. This was something else, something toxic. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider a word I'd never associated with my marriage before: abuse. That dinner party wasn't just a one-off thing. As I lay awake that night, memories came flooding back. A constant stream of small cuts that had slowly bled my self-worth dry over our years together. In the beginning, her comments were subtle, disguised as jokes or helpful suggestions. "Maybe you should wear shoes with thicker soles," she'd say before we went to events with her colleagues. "It might help you look more authoritative." I'd laugh it off, thinking she was just being practical. "You might want to let me order for both of us," she'd say at restaurants with her friends. "You always choose the wrong wine." Then she'd pat my hand like I was a child. This despite the fact that I was in great shape. I used to compete in amateur kickboxing fights in my 20s. Nothing professional, but I held my own. She knew this. Hell, I have a small trophy case in our basement. She insisted we hide it when her parents first visited. "It seems so aggressive," she'd said. "Don't want them to think you're some kind of meathead." She'd always find ways to minimize my accomplishments while highlighting her own. When I closed a big account at work, she'd say, "That's nice," and change the subject. But if she got the smallest recognition at her job, we'd have to go out to celebrate. She'd talk about it for weeks. Then came the bedroom comments. What started as guidance quickly turned to criticism. "Is that it?" she'd ask with visible disappointment. Or worse, she'd sigh and turn away, mumbling, "Don't worry about it. and I'm used to it by now. Each time I tried harder to please her, only to face more disappointment, more sighs, more subtle head shakes. I remember this one time I suggested trying something new in bed. Nothing crazy, just mixing things up a bit. She laughed and said, "That's cute, but you can barely handle the basics. Let's not get ahead of ourselves." After a while, I stopped initiating altogether. Why set yourself up for failure? Then she started complaining that I never initiated anymore. "Most husbands actually want to sleep with their wives," she'd say. It was like being trapped in a no-win situation. My promotion at work 3 years ago should have been a celebration. I finally made senior consultant after years of grinding, a 40% pay increase and a company car. Instead, when I proudly told her, she responded, "That's nice, I guess. They must not have had many options this year." Then she immediately changed the subject to her own work accomplishments. I remember standing in our kitchen, a bottle of 25-year-old scotch unopened, as she talked about herself for 40 minutes straight. I'd bought that bottle to celebrate with her, but ended up drinking it alone in the garage a month later while working on my project car, a '67 Mustang I'd been restoring for years. The garage became my sanctuary, the one place she rarely went because she didn't like the smell. In retrospect, it was probably the only part of my life she hadn't completely invaded and critiqued. Family gatherings were another battlefield. She'd introduce me to distant relatives, hand on my shoulder. "This is my husband. He's not what I expected when I dreamed about marriage as a little girl, but we make do, don't we, honey?" All while wearing that perfect smile that made everyone think she was just being playfully affectionate. When we'd shop for clothes, she'd hold up smaller sizes. "Maybe someday, right?" she'd say right in front of store assistants. If I tried something on that I liked, she'd frown slightly and say, "It's fine if that's what you want, but it doesn't really do you any favors." Even my hobbies weren't safe. When I started taking kickboxing again, something I'd always enjoyed, she laughed and told her friends on the phone, "It's his midlife crisis, I think. He's trying to recapture his glory days, but mostly he just comes home sore and whiny." I stopped going after 3 months. The worst was when my dad got sick. Instead of supporting me through the hardest time of my life, she turned it into a chore. "Do we have to go visit him again? We just went last weekend." Or, "I don't see why you need to be there so much. The doctors are doing everything they can." The night after his funeral, she complained I was bringing the mood down at home and suggested I try to move on. My father wasn't even in the ground yet, and she was telling me to get over it. Looking back now, I can see so clearly what I couldn't see then. This was a pattern of systematic emotional abuse. Death by 1,000 cuts. Each one small enough to dismiss individually, but together, they had nearly destroyed me. The most messed up pattern was how she'd build me up in private, just enough to tear me down in public. She'd say I looked handsome as we got ready for an event, only to later tell everyone how she had to help me coordinate my outfit because he dresses like a colorblind teenager. She'd praise a meal I cooked at home, then tell dinner guests I was still learning basic techniques. Our vacations followed the same script. She'd criticize my planning abilities, my navigation skills, my restaurant choices, all while documenting our perfect couple moments for social media. The contrast between her online portrayal of our marriage and the reality was crazy. The night after that dinner party, I found myself scrolling through her Instagram. She'd posted photos from the evening. Amazing dinner with amazing friends and my amazing husband who made it all happen. The comments were filled with heart emojis and couple goals responses. That's when it truly hit me. I was living in 2 different marriages. The public one she crafted online, and the private one where I was constantly reminded I wasn't enough. As morning light came through our bedroom curtains, I realized with startling clarity, this wasn't love. This was abuse, and it had been happening for years. The realization that I was in an abusive marriage changed something inside me. For the first time, I started paying attention to little things I'd been ignoring, like how protective she was with her phone, how she'd always turn it face down when I entered the room, how she'd step outside to take certain calls claiming they were work-related, even at 10 p.m. on weekends. I'd never been the jealous type. I trusted her completely, even when friends hinted I maybe shouldn't. All those overnight conferences, my buddy Thomas had said once, just seems convenient. I'd shut him down immediately. She's not like that. Her career is important to her. 2 days after the dinner party, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while taking a shower. It buzzed repeatedly with incoming messages. I'd never snooped before. Trust had always been important to me, even when I was the only one practicing it. But something made me look this time. The lock screen showed messages from someone saved as BT training. Missing you already, baby. Last night was incredible. Still feel you on me. When can you get away again? Need more of that ass. My hands were shaking as I picked up her phone. By some bitter coincidence, she hadn't changed her password since we'd set up each other's phones years ago. I opened the message thread and felt the room spin around me. Hundreds of messages stretched back months. Explicit photos, detailed accounts of hotel meetups, plans for their next encounter. This gym guy wasn't even her coworker like I'd first thought. He was some loser she met at a work conference, a part-time personal trainer who worked at her hotel's gym, but mostly lived off his parents at 37. From their messages, I gathered he was living in their basement apartment, driving his dad's old car. They had inside jokes about me, about my job, about my performance in bed, about how clueless I was. The most recent messages discussed their plans for tomorrow night. Apparently, I would be working late, which was news to me. But what truly destroyed me were the messages where they discussed me. He has no idea, she'd written. Too busy trying to please me to notice anything. The guy had asked if she felt guilty. For being with a real man for once? She'd replied. He should thank me for staying with him this long. At least BT knows how to use what he's got. Even if all he's got is a big D and not much else LOL. I scrolled further back, finding messages from the night of the dinner party. He just sits there and takes it, she'd written. I practically called him tiny and inadequate in front of everyone. And he still served dessert with a smile. It's almost too easy. BT responded, that's because he knows he can't do better than you. Bet he gets off thinking about you with a real man. There were pictures too, comparing us. Explicit details about how much bigger and better BT was. How he could go all night while I couldn't last 5 minutes. How she'd come home from their meetups and lie next to me still feeling him inside her. I felt sick. I felt rage. But mostly, I felt a strange cold clarity that I hadn't felt in years. I kept reading, unable to stop myself. The messages went back 7 months almost to the day, but there were references to others before BT. Mentions of a Christopher and someone called PT, who apparently had been fun while it lasted. My entire marriage flashed before my eyes. All those late nights at the office, the weekend conferences, the girls' trips, had any of it been real? Had she ever been faithful? I heard the shower turn off upstairs. With mechanical precision, I took screenshots of key conversations, texted them to myself, then deleted the messages from her phone. I replaced it exactly where I'd found it, walked to the kitchen sink, and splashed cold water on my face. When she came downstairs, wrapped in her robe with her hair in a towel, I asked, "Sleep well?" My voice was surprisingly steady. "Like a baby," she replied, completely unaware her world was about to crash down. I printed the key documents and screenshots and secured them in a folder. Then I called my buddy Thomas and asked if I could stay at his place for a few days. Thomas and I go way back to high school. The kind of friend who would help you bury a body and never ask questions. We played lacrosse together and got into our share of trouble as teenagers. He was the best man at my wedding. "Everything okay?" he asked immediately, sensing something was wrong. "Not really," I admitted. "Can't talk about it right now, but I need a place to crash for a bit." "Mi casa es su casa, brother," he said without hesitation. "Want me to bring whiskey?" "Maybe tomorrow," I said. "Tonight I need a clear head." Next, I contacted a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but Catherine Stone, reputed to be the most ruthless divorce attorney in Chicago. Her firm's tagline was literally, "We don't get even, we get everything." "I can see you at 3 p.m., she said after hearing the briefest outline of my situation. "Bring any financial records you can gather, and those screenshots." I spent the next hour gathering what I could without raising suspicion. Bank statements, investment account information. I even took photos of her jewelry collection. Things I'd bought her over the years were thousands. That evening, I acted completely normal. Asked about her day, made dinner, suggested watching her favorite show. All while the folder sat hidden in my briefcase by the door. All while she texted him, right next to me on the couch, smiling at her phone screen. "Good news at work?" I asked casually. "Just a project coming together," she replied without looking up. "Nothing you'd understand." I nodded and sipped my bourbon, studying her face. This stranger I'd shared my life with for 9 years. This woman who had systematically destroyed my self-worth while betraying me in the most fundamental way possible. "I love you," I said, testing the words. She glanced up briefly. "Love you too," she responded automatically before returning to her phone. That moment of practiced empty routine made everything crystal clear. I wasn't just being belittled and mocked. I was being actively deceived by someone who held no real love for me. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something unexpected rising within me. Not heartbreak, not even anger, but a cool, clarifying resolve. It was time to end the charade. I'm not going to lie. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, to throw her phone against the wall and watch her face as I laid out every detail I knew. The old me, the fighter who never backed down from a challenge, was screaming to be let loose. But the strategist in me, the part that helped me climb from entry level to senior consultant, knew better. This wasn't a bar fight. This was psychological warfare, and I needed to be smart. So I waited and I planned. Meeting with Catherine went exactly as I'd hoped. She was cold, calculating, and completely on my side. "This is an extremely strong case," she said, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. "The infidelity is well documented, and from what you've described, there's a clear pattern of emotional abuse." "What do I do next?" I asked. "Don't confront her yet," Catherine advised. "We need to secure your assets first. Move half the money from joint accounts to a new personal account. Document every item of value in the house. Forward me any additional evidence of affairs. And most importantly, don't let her know you're planning to leave until we're ready." I followed her instructions to the letter over the next 2 days, methodically preparing for the end of my marriage. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, documented our assets, and even took a day off work to move essential belongings to Thomas's place while she was at work. I also did one more thing. I found BT's social media accounts and figured out who his parents were. A quick search revealed their address, the same basement apartment he was living in. I did some digging and found out his dad was actually a minister at a local church. That information might come in handy later. Everything was in place for the confrontation I knew had to happen. That evening, I prepared her favorite dinner, grilled salmon with roasted asparagus and white wine. She came home surprised by the romantic setup. "What's the occasion?" she asked, tossing her keys on the counter. "Just felt like doing something nice," I replied, pouring her a glass of wine. "How was your day?" "Busy, stressful, the usual." She checked her phone again, probably messaging BT before sitting down. We ate in relative silence until I finally spoke. "I need to talk to you about something important," she sighed dramatically. "Can it wait? I'm exhausted." "No, it can't." I placed the folder on the table between us. "I know about the affair." Her expression cycled rapidly through shock, then denial, then calculation, before settling on indignation. "What are you talking about?" I opened the folder and laid out the evidence piece by piece. The hotel receipts, text message screenshots, restaurant bills, phone records. "You went through my phone?" she snapped, attempting to flip the script. "That's a complete invasion of privacy." "Yes, I did," I admitted calmly. "After years of your emotional abuse and public humiliation, I finally listened to my instincts." She laughed incredulously. "Abuse? Are you serious right now? I've supported you through everything." "You've belittled me at every opportunity," I countered. "You've mocked my height, my performance in bed, my career, all while sleeping with some deadbeat who lives in his parents' basement." Her eyes widened. "You don't know anything about BT. I know enough. I know he's 37 and lives with mommy and daddy. I know his father's a minister who would probably be fascinated to learn what his son has been up to. I know he's not even on your company payroll, despite you listing him as a work contact." Her strategy shifted instantly. Tears formed in her eyes as she reached for a new approach. "I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. We can work through this. The affair is just one part of why this marriage is over," I explained, maintaining my composure. "Even without it, I wouldn't stay with someone who treats me with such contempt." She reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled back. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "I've been under so much pressure at work. He was just there. It was a moment of weakness." 7 months of moments," I corrected her. "And the things you said about me." Her tears vanished instantly, replaced by cold fury. "Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been unhappy. What did you expect? You never satisfied me. Not financially, not emotionally, not physically." I nodded, almost relieved to finally hear her honest thoughts. "That's exactly why I'm leaving. I deserve better than someone who sees me that way." "You?" she scoffed. "Better than me? Good luck finding anyone who will put up with your limitations." She gestured dismissively at my crotch. "By limitations, do you mean my inability to detect liars?" I replied, feeling strangely calm. "Because that's definitely improved recently. Or maybe you mean my limitation of believing my wife when she said she loved me. That one's cured too." Her face contorted with anger. "You think this is funny? You think you can just walk away from me? I'm not walking away from you, I corrected her. I'm walking away from this. I gestured between us. This isn't a marriage, it's a performance, and I'm done playing my part. In that moment, looking at her beautiful face twisted with cruelty, I felt a strange sense of peace. This woman had never loved me. She'd only loved controlling me, diminishing me. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I said. The divorce papers will be ready tomorrow. I'll be staying elsewhere until it's finalized. Her expression changed again, panic breaking through the contempt. You can't be serious. Where will you go? What will people think? I don't care what people think anymore, I replied, standing up. That was always your concern, not mine. I moved toward the door where I'd stashed my overnight bag earlier. She rushed after me, grabbing my arm. Wait, we need to talk about this. You can't just throw away 9 years. I removed her hand firmly. You threw them away. One comment, one lie, one betrayal at a time. You'll never make it without me, she hissed, her mask completely fallen now. You were nothing when I met you. I made you who you are. I laughed at that, genuinely amused. Is that what you tell yourself? That the senior consultant with his own house and car was nothing? That the guy everyone at work respects was nothing? That's some impressive revisionist history. Where will you go? She demanded again. That's no longer your concern, I said simply. For the first time in our marriage, I saw something new in her eyes. Not love, not affection, but stunned recognition that I was no longer under her control. You'll regret this, she whispered. You'll never find anyone like me. I smiled genuinely. That's exactly what I'm counting on. I walked out of our house that night with just a duffel bag and laptop. The cool evening air felt like freedom against my face. Thomas was waiting in his truck at the end of the block. I had arranged everything down to the minute. She followed me to the porch, her voice shifting between rage and desperation. You think this is some kind of movie moment? She shouted. You think you're teaching me a lesson? Get back inside! I kept walking, not looking back. Her voice changed again. Please, she called softer now. I'm sorry, we can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want. For a second, my steps faltered. 9 years of habit nearly pulled me back into her orbit. She doesn't look happy, Thomas observed as we drove away. She's not used to losing control, I replied. Later that night, after a few drinks at Thomas's place, he finally asked the question I knew was coming. What happened, man? I thought you guys were solid. I showed him some of the screenshots. His face darkened as he read them. Jesus Christ, he muttered. What a psycho. I always thought there was something off about her, but this is next level. Yeah, I agreed, taking another swig of bourbon. The crazy thing is, I didn't even see it until now. It's like I've been underwater for years, and I just finally came up for air. Thomas put his hand on my shoulder. You're going to be okay, brother. You're staying here as long as you need. And when you're ready, we're going to celebrate your freedom. The next 3 days were a blur of practical matters. My lawyer expedited the divorce papers. I opened new accounts and arranged for a moving company to collect my remaining possessions while she was at work. I found a small apartment and signed a 6-month lease. Throughout it all, my phone never stopped. Her messages came in waves, angry then pleading, then threatening, then bargaining. You can't do this to me. 3:47 a.m. Please come home and talk about this. 4:12 a.m. If you go through with this, I'll make sure everyone knows what a failure you are in bed. 7:03 a.m. I didn't mean it, baby. I was just angry. I love you so much. Please call me. 11:30 a.m. I didn't respond to any of them. My lawyer advised against it, and frankly, I had nothing left to say. She showed up at my office, creating a scene that only reinforced my decision. My assistant had to call security to escort her out. My boss called me into his office afterward. Is everything okay? He asked, concerned. That seemed intense. I took a deep breath and decided to be honest. I'm getting divorced. Found out my wife has been cheating on me, among other issues. To my surprise, he nodded sympathetically. Been there. My first wife had an affair with our neighbor. Worst time of my life, but trust me, it gets better. I hope so, I said. Take whatever time you need, he offered. And if you need someone to talk to who's been through it, my door's open. She sent her sister to talk sense into me, which backfired when her sister, after hearing the full story, quietly told me she understood my decision. She's always been like this, her sister confessed. She did the same thing to her college boyfriend, made him feel worthless until he believed it. Why didn't you ever say anything? I asked. Her sister looked down, ashamed. I tried once. She didn't speak to me for a year afterward. I guess I was a coward. I didn't stop there, though. Remember how I mentioned BT's dad was a minister? I sent an anonymous package to his church with printouts of more explicit messages between BT and my wife. Nothing identifying her directly, but enough that his parents would know what their precious boy was up to, breaking up a marriage and living a lifestyle that directly contradicted their teachings. Was it petty? Maybe, but sometimes karma needs a little help. On the fourth day, I returned to the house with a police escort to collect some personal items. I didn't trust movers with family photos, heirlooms from my parents, and important documents. She was waiting, eyes red and puffy. "You called the police on me?" she hissed as I entered. "I'm just here for my things," I said, moving past her to our bedroom. She followed me, watching silently as I collected what remained of my life before her. "What about all the good times?" she finally asked. "You're just throwing everything away." I paused, considering my answer carefully. "No," I replied. "You did that when you decided I wasn't enough. You didn't have to say it. You showed it every day, in 1,000 tiny ways." For the first time, she seemed to have no response. She stood in the doorway, diminished somehow, as I carried my box toward the front door. As I reached the threshold, she made one last attempt. "Your name is still on the mortgage," she said. "You're still responsible for half." I nodded. "The lawyer will sort that out. Sell the house if you need to." "I can't afford it alone," she admitted, vulnerability breaking through her armor. "That's not my problem anymore." Her face contorted with a flash of the old contempt. "This is exactly why I needed someone else. You're too weak to even fight for our marriage." I looked at her, really looked at her one last time. In that moment, I saw her clearly. Not the goddess I'd placed on a pedestal, not the cruel manipulator of recent days, just a flawed, insecure person who had built herself up by tearing others down. "I'm not fighting for something that hurts me," I said simply. "That's not weakness, that's self-respect." I closed the door behind me, her first genuine sob breaking through as it clicked shut. The sound followed me down the walkway. Raw, uncontrolled, and strangely satisfying. In the police officer's car, I exhaled fully for what felt like the first time in years. My phone buzzed again with her incoming call. I turned it off. "All good?" the officer asked. "Getting there," I replied, watching our house shrink in the side mirrors as we drove away. The officer, an older guy with graying temples, nodded knowingly. "Been on a lot of these domestic calls. Never gets easier." "Domestic, I'm not—" I started to protest. "Not all abuse leaves bruises, son," he said quietly. "Seen plenty of men in your position. Nobody talks about it much, but it happens." I hadn't really thought about it in those terms before. Me, a victim of domestic abuse. It didn't fit the image I had of myself. But then again, neither did cheated on husband or divorced guy at 41. Life has a way of giving you identities you never asked for. 6 months can change everything. The divorce was finalized faster than expected. She didn't contest it once she realized I wouldn't return. Catherine, my lawyer, was ruthlessly efficient. I got a fair division of assets. I didn't try to take her to the cleaners, even though I probably could have. I just wanted out. The house sold quickly in a hot market. After splitting the proceeds, I had enough to place a down payment on a sleek condo downtown, closer to my office. 2 bedrooms, industrial style, with exposed brick and big windows, the complete opposite of the suburban McMansion we'd lived in. This place actually felt like me. Later, I heard through mutual friends that her medical equipment company downsized her division 2 months after our separation. Apparently, her boss had been protecting her mediocre performance because they were having an affair too. When his wife found out and threatened divorce, he ended things with her, and she was the first one cut in the layoffs. For those asking if I was weak for not confronting her earlier or not fighting harder for the relationship, listen up. Staying in an abusive relationship isn't strength. Leaving one is. And fighting for a relationship only works when both people are fighting for the same thing. If you're with someone who constantly makes you feel inadequate, who betrays your trust, who mocks you in front of others, that's not love. That's possession. Know the difference. And for the guys asking how to know if you're in an abusive relationship, if you constantly walk on eggshells around your partner, if you can't remember the last time you felt respected by them, if they build themselves up by tearing you down, if they isolate you from friends and family, those are pretty big red flags. Check out Dr. Jensen's work on contempt in relationships. It was eye-opening for me. He explains how contempt is the single greatest predictor of relationship failure and how it erodes the foundation of any partnership. When you're treated with constant contempt, it's not just unpleasant, it's destructive to your very sense of self. Looking back on everything now, from this new condo with its city views and the peace I've found, I realized that what happened with Olivia wasn't just about her infidelity. That was just the final revelation that forced me to see what had been happening all along. The affair was a symptom, not the disease. The real problem was the years of systematic emotional abuse that had gradually worn down my self-esteem to the point where I thought I deserved the treatment I was getting. I've started therapy myself, something I would have scoffed at a year ago. My therapist helped me understand that abuse victims often don't recognize their situation because abuse rarely starts dramatically. It begins with small comments, minor criticisms, subtle put-downs that individually seem insignificant. But over time, they accumulate and create a distorted reality where the victim begins to believe they deserve the abuse. I've reconnected with old friends that I had drifted away from during my marriage. Turns out Olivia had been subtly poisoning those relationships too, making comments about how childish my friends were, how they were holding me back. Classic isolation tactics that I didn't recognize at the time. I've even started kickboxing again. At 41, I'm not as quick as I used to be, but man does it feel good to reconnect with something I love that I gave up for her. The guys at the gym have become a kind of support system. Many of them have been through divorces or bad relationships themselves. Thomas has been my rock through all this. He never once said, "I told you so," even though he had every right to. Instead, he's been there with bourbon and bad jokes whenever I needed them. True friendship is something you can't put a price on. As for dating again, I'm taking my time. Had a few casual dinners, nothing serious yet. I'm still learning who I am outside of that relationship, still discovering the parts of myself that got buried under years of criticism and contempt. But I'm not bitter about love. If anything, I now have a much clearer understanding of what real love should look like: mutual respect, support, honesty. Things I never truly had with Olivia. Sometimes people ask if I miss her. The honest answer is that I miss who I thought she was, who we could have been together. I miss the illusion, not the reality. Because the reality was never what I imagined it to be. I think about that dinner party sometimes, how it was the catalyst for all this change. If she hadn't been so publicly cruel that night, would I have continued in that marriage for years more? Probably. Sometimes the most painful moments turn out to be the most necessary ones. So if you're reading this and something in my story resonates with you, if you recognize the patterns of contempt, if you feel that constant inadequacy in your relationship, know that you deserve better. It's not weakness to walk away from someone who hurts you. It's not failure to prioritize your own well-being. It's the first step toward finding yourself again. And for what it's worth, from someone who's been there, it gets better. The world looks different on the other side. Brighter, clearer, more full of possibility than you can imagine when you're trapped in the fog of an abusive relationship. Trust me on that one.